Hello and welcome back to the Blame Game for a very special edition to talk about the MSI tournament format. It's been under a little bit of criticism recently, and then Jat and I talked about it on JLXP. This prompted someone's thread on Reddit to get a lot of upvotes. It's just been a conversation going on for a while that people are not really satisfied with the MSI format. Now, I want to say right out the bat, we're not talking about ping or any of the other issues that might have cropped up. Those are kind of independent of what should, in theory, make a good tournament, because real world problems that we have to deal with. Whereas the format, in theory, should be the same going forward, and whether or not it's good or bad, we can discuss. And a lot of people submitted things to me and Jat. Thank you all so much. I think Jat will be making something about it. I'm not quite sure, but I've been reading them, and I wanted to toss my own hat in the ring for how I would try to fix the MSI tournament format. But before we dig in there, I want to go over some ground rules about problems in the past with other formats, what this one actually does fix, but then what needs to be carried over into future formats. So let's dig into it. Alrighty, so I'm just going to be doing this one in a spreadsheet. Apologies for the lack of dope-ass graphics that we normally have. So here are the things that I want to cover that any format change that gets proposed needs to kind of carry with it. To start, what the old MSI and old Worlds had problems with when they had the International Wildcard Qualifier. That's what IWCQ stood for. First up, it was not very good viewership. On the English-speaking channel, we were getting around 20 to 40K, I believe, for those games. Whereas now, despite the problems people might have with the MSI format, the viewership is anywhere between 100 and 200,000, depending on who's playing. So obviously, it's a much better viewership experience. It didn't have any major regions in it, which is why the viewership suffered. It was hard to justify the cost and acquire sponsors then, because the viewership was substantially lower and it wasn't prestigious. It felt like a separate tournament, and minor regions never got to play the major regions as a result. So for them, it really did feel like they were kind of a second-class tournament going on before the real one began. So the current MSI fixed that problem. So they introduced the major regions into a kind of pool system to make a bunch of groups that then play each other. However, that brought in its own problems that people are feeling right now. While they are watching the games, just before they didn't watch, they're watching them and not necessarily enjoying them. So the problems are, first up, the major region games can be uncompetitive. They tend to slaughter the people. There were really not that many close games involving the major regions. The minor regions don't get to play each other. So they go up, get slapped down by T1, then they go slapped down by, I don't know, one of the PCS, VCS, or LCS representatives. Like, Order didn't really have a chance versus us. So Order gets slammed by LEC and LCS, and this is partially the fault of their own group not having their last person in there between Pool 3 and Pool 4, but then you're still only playing one other team that you might have a chance against in the Pool 3 if you're a Pool 4. There's not really any cross-pollination between the minor region teams. At the same time, that's true for the top region teams as well. None of those teams play any games against each other through the first week of the tournament, so it's a ton of stomps taking up the entire first third of your tournament, which is then expanded to make it even worse because these end up with a lot of dead games. The groups are decided early. T1 goes 4-0, RNG goes 4-0. The rest of their games don't matter. They're getting out no matter what because you're not playing for any seeding, because you just go into another 2 stages of best of 1 groups. This is the other problem with it, is it's very redundant. You get a ton of stomps. Teams feel bad because they're just getting shit on by teams that are better than them and don't get to feel out where they actually land within the minor region landscape. There's a ton of dead games, and it's very redundant. So what you're going to need to fix is all those problems, but what you're going to need to keep going forward is the current format of broadcast generally, which is there's 3 weeks, 6 days of games, then I believe it's 5 days of games, and I believe it's 3 days of games. Now that can wiggle a little bit, adding a day here or there, or like subtracting one, you know, like you can't make this 7, you could maybe make this 6, this could go to 4 maybe, but generally speaking, that is the kind of necessity for the broadcast. Single stream, dual streams just don't really work. People aren't going to watch on one of them, and it's just to like slam through games, which for MSI as a small tournament is not going to be something Riot's really ever going to consider. So you can probably make a good format with dual streams. Don't get me wrong, it's just probably not going to happen. So we'll try and keep this realistic. Normal broadcast hours, you can't play 12 games in a day, so that's something that, yeah, we did 9, and it did not feel good this tournament. Out of necessity, we did that, but there's like venue hours, how you pay people. There's a lot of logistical concerns that come with trying to go above and beyond the regular operating hours. The format should have the major regions playing from the beginning. It should have an opportunity for the minor regions to play an upset. A lot of people are saying we should just revert back to this one, but I really don't think that's a good idea for viewership reasons. And to be fair to the minor regions, to give them a chance to do something legendary and kaboom someone, like that is very important in giving them the opportunity to. But you don't want any dead games, and that's a huge part for giving minor regions as well a chance to battle against each other, so that even if you're not going to beat T1, well, maybe you'll beat some of the other, minor regions. So without any further ado, here is my own submission for what I would do if I was making the MSI tournament. Okay, I know this might look a little overwhelming at first, but bear with me. This is a lot more about my formatting skills, not being good and doing this in Excel, more than it says about how complicated this is to follow. It's actually very simple. It's basically a kind of Swiss system. And I will step you through how the tournament works in theory, as well as how that would relate to an actual broadcasted show. The way to think about this is imagine all teams start at 0-0 and it's a race to either getting 4 wins or 4 losses. If you reach 4 wins, you're gonna promote into the bracket stage of the tournament. If you lose 4 games, you're out. Now, the way to think about it is you're just trying to climb steps and you're gonna play against similar teams that will knock you up or down these steps until you either qualify in or drop out. How this works is it starts with a 12-team group at 0-0. Based off your international results from the last 4 events, I'm saying, hypothetically, this should be something of the order. I didn't really fact check all of the current standings of the teams, like maybe CB Lowell should be lower or higher. I'm not 100% sure. But the general idea is then that LPL, as the 1 seed, will play what is the 12 seed in the OPL. LCK will play the second to last seed, the LLA, LEC, yada, yada, yada. You get all these matches. For the sake of this, I'm just going to assume there's no upsets. I know realistically crazy shit would happen. It always does. But for the sake of it, we're just going to follow this. So in round 1, there's going to be all these teams play. And everyone's either going to win a game or going to lose a game. And it will make 2 new groups. In round 2, all the 1-0 teams are in a group. LPL, LCK, LEC, LCS, PCS, VCS. All the 0-1 teams are going to make their own group. Within that own group, you're now going to do the same thing. The highest seeded team will play the lowest seeded team. LPL will play the VCS. LCK will play the PCS. LEC will play the LCS, and you're going to do the same thing. The way that you select how these matches go, as I've defined it here, is based off their current win rate, so within their own little group, then based off international results, basically seeding. You want to avoid repeats, which you'll see a little bit later on as we go through this. And then this is where it's tricky. The current system does not use a perfect square. And anytime you are not using a perfect square in a tournament, you need to kind of invent some new rules to make it really work well. So 2, 4, 8, 16 are the ideal numbers. We're working with 12. And so what that means is in round 3, you're going to get a group of 3, a group of 3 down here, and a group of 6 in the middle. You're going to have to make up some rules around how you decide who moves down into the 1-in-1 group to play. In this example, I have hypothetically said, well, you want the games to be competitive. That's kind of what we care a lot about. So LPL will play the LEC, and then the LCK will go down and play CB Lowell, and we're going to merge 1 team up here. Again, exactly how you choose to do this little bit of merger is very important. I admit there's different ways you can choose to do it. You might say, well, we don't want the worst seeded team to get a really unfair matchup versus LCK. But realistically, they're just going to have to play more games and kind of prove their worth, so it's not the end of the world. You can pick however you want to do this little bit of group merger when there's odd numbers. It will result in even numbers again, and then the kind of odd numbers, and we'll continue walking through the tournament. But basically, you just have to pick some rules to choose one of these teams to join the 1-in-1 group and one of these odd number groups to join up here. Again, hypothetically, you might say the LCK is going to move down for some reason and play CB Lowell, or maybe OPL is going to move up and they're going to play LCS, and then you play the games out from there. Again, teams start climbing, so you're left with 2 3-0 teams, 4 2-1 teams, 4 1-2 teams, and 2 0-3 teams. Now this is where it starts getting interesting. I don't care about playing games that don't matter. I think that's one of the things that annoys me with the current format is we get so many dead games. Once you reach 4-0, you're qualified. You're in. So the winner of this game is auto-promoted. Loser of this game is auto-out. It no longer matters. In this group, you do the same thing. You'll play these matchups, trying to avoid repeats if they've already played earlier in the tournament. Doing the same thing here. LPL will promote out. Let's say, theoretically, OPL gets to 0-4. They're knocked out. So now you have this system again. You're going to need to pick one of these 2 teams to move down. If we're following the same rules as here, let's say LCK plays LCS, LEC plays TCL, for example, and now you have 3 teams promoted. What's really nice about this system is not only does it tell you who should play in the bracket stage, it also seeds it for you. Something that the current group stages in both Worlds and at MSI tragically fail at. The seeding is not very good. So by round 6, you'll have 3 teams qualified, 3 teams knocked out. You'll have to do this again, trying to avoid repeats. That will give you 5 teams knocked out, or 5 teams qualified, 5 teams knocked out, and then a do or die match here. In the end, you'll end up with your 6 teams for group stage and 6 teams, or for bracket stage, and 6 teams knocked out of the tournament, nicely splitting down the middle. All of that in a single week. using the current broadcast format of 6 games a day for 6 days, which is what just happened for the group stage of MSI, you can do the same thing. 12 teams playing 6 games for the first one. Again, 12 teams playing 6 games for day 2. Here, it's the same thing again. No teams have been knocked out. You just have to kind of pick who's going to play against each other, and you can have these games playing. The other nice thing is that it allows you to kind of play these games in any order. So you can start the day. I didn't do it here, but you could, in theory, start the day with the LCK game, put the LPL game at the end of the day, and make sure you have a really nice flow of games between the teams in the upper bracket and the teams in the lower bracket to keep viewership high for all the games while getting more competitive games than we're currently getting. Again, you'll have to worry about exactly how you want to merge these groups around on day 3, but you can see here, I've moved the LCK versus CBLOL, and I've done the LCS versus the LCL. You can do whatever kind of rules you want here, as long as you're trying to keep it fair, ideally. Where it starts getting a little different is when teams start getting knocked out on the broadcast day. So when you're settling round 5 on day 5, you're going to be losing a game because 2 teams aren't in there, but you'll get a nice 5-game day. And on the final day, you will have 4 games to qualify these last teams. But you can work in tiebreakers if you want for seeding here. If you want the LCK and LEC to do some tiebreakers, or do the LCS versus PCS do some tiebreakers, you can do it here. The nice thing about this format is mathematically, these are going to be the records at the end of the day every single time, because it's win up, lose down, and that's what's going to be every single time. So if you want to balance out the day so it's not just a 4-game day here at the end, as well as make some of your good teams play again, if you want LCK and LEC to be playing on your last day, a tiebreaker right here is a perfect time to do something like that. The really nice thing about this is it buys you an extra week of play. By handling, instead of doing 2 group stages, you've done it all in 1 group stage and seeded into a bracket with 6 teams and 2 weeks of broadcast left, which means we get what everyone's always wanted: double elim, baby! So this is kind of copying a lot of the regional formats that have been taking over. You have a winner's bracket in the top side with 4 teams and 2 teams waiting in the loser's bracket down here. That also makes this tiebreaker match extremely important if you get top side or bot side of the bracket. So again, this is really simple. The teams up here play. If you lose, you go down here and keep playing. So let's say LCS loses to LPL as the 4 seed against them. They now play the PCS here, and the VCS plays the LEC. And then you have the losers bracket, LCS versus LEC, while the winners bracket plays LPL, LCK, drops down, play again, drops up, play again. How does this translate into the broadcast show? Well, for week 2, you're going to basically play out everything but the last couple games in the losers bracket. So you'll do the LPL versus the LCS, LCK versus LEC. Then you'll have the 2 games that were round 1 of the losers bracket and the last winner's final. So at the end of week 1, you know who one of your finalists is, guaranteed, which is pretty important for narrative story building if you ask any broadcaster. From there, you're going to do a bunch of the losers bracket runs, so LCS versus LEC, then LCK versus LEC, and then the winner of that in the finals. So what are the potential problems with this format? Well, the tiebreaker rules can be a little iffy. It's different of a format than League fans are used to, but Swiss is used in a lot of other tournament formats. And I think while this can look a little jarring, again, my formatting is not good, it's very easy to explain that you try to play teams at the same level as you, and if you win, you promote up. If you lose, you go down. You just try and play teams at a similar record. That's all it really is. The tiebreaker rules right here will be heavily debated, I think, if you do this format, exactly what's fair. Should the LPL go down and play CBLOL? Is that fair to CBLOL? Is that fair to LPL? If the LCL goes up, then they're more likely to take a win, even though they're playing better competition, and then they lose again, which doesn't really feel fair. Maybe the OPL should go up, but then you're getting uncompetitive games. So there's a little bit of a push and pull there. It's impossible to make a perfect tournament. There's always going to be things that you're trading off, but I think this one will result in no dead games, which is great. You're going to get good matchups throughout the tournament. You're going to allow the minor regions to have a chance of upsetting here. There's a lot of games where they have a chance to upset, but then there's a lot of games that they just play against each other and have the chance to beat them. It's very high stakes as you move later on into the bracket, as you get these kind of do or die games. Like if the LCS had ended up getting, let's say, upset by the VCS, they're 3-3 and it's do or die versus LJL. That's hype. There's not a single game on here that doesn't matter. The only other thing I can see people being concerned about is an uneven number of games. Technically, the LPL would be qualified out by the end of day 4 and not need to play day 5 or day 6, whoever's the number 1 seed. This is also not a huge concern because in the current system, the LPL will only play on days where its group is playing at the end when they're trying to settle those, because they run them all top to bottom for that second round robin. So, like LPL will play 2 games that day. It's the same thing here. They're not playing, so it's not really a trade-off that doesn't already exist. Anyways, this is my solution for how I would fix MSI. Personally, I'm very happy with it. You do have to worry about, avoiding some of these rules and making sure that these are as fair as they get. But in theory, this is a great tournament for me because you get competitive games right out the gate. You don't need to watch a ton of stomps. You're still giving teams fair opportunities to upset teams above them and get experience while letting them play teams more around their skill level. You're not getting any wasted games. The format frees up double elimination for the bracket stage, which people have always wanted. You get way more hype matchups on this side when you get here. Like 2 LPL versus LCK finals. That sounds great, as well as playing a best of 1 earlier on. Like, there's so many cool matchups that can happen with a bracket like this and a group stage like this that I personally think this would be great. Do I think Riot's going to do it? Probably not. But if anyone wants help building it for next year, you know where to contact me. So anyways, thank you all for watching. Like I said, very different Blame game, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this and if you enjoy seeing this or what problems you think you wouldn't like with it. So let me know. I'll catch you guys later for the Rumble stage. Yeah, the Rumble stage. Catch you then.
Hello everyone, it is me, Travis. I'm staying up late again for MSI this year. Wow, I'm excited for when I get to finally travel to international events, starting with Worlds this year. But the cool thing is that I would probably not have the will to do this if it wasn't for Alienware supporting me, because it's late. It's very late here in California, and I'm tired. But it doesn't matter because I want to get you this great coverage, and Alienware wants to support me getting you that great coverage. So thank you to Alienware for making this all possible, and I will stay awake with their support.